Hola, Jesse.
Hola, Gary. Hola, amigos. ¿Cómo estamos? How are we doing today? Everybody good, I hope?
We have 4 people. Idel and Rhoda are with us.
Hi, Adele. Hi, Ron.
Oh, we're up to 14 people. Nancy just started.
Welcome,
watching.
everybody, for joining us. Welcome, welcome. I'm sure that everyone else is going to start joining as they realize we've started. So we'll give them a couple minutes.
Shirley and Debbie. I feel like Mrs. Francis. Remember Mrs. Francis in Romper Room? Jesse, you're too young. I see Donna and Bill. And Bobby. And another Bobby. We're up to 55 people, Jesse.
Oh, good. What time are we at? We're at 2 minutes after. All right, well, I'll go ahead and give an introduction then.
Okay.
So, hi, everybody. So, today I am here to share with you one of my new media methods, something I'm greatly enjoying. As a disclaimer, I am not the world's greatest painter. Your results with this are going to increase as your skill with painting in general increases. So this is a product known as Color Magic, and I have pretty much every color there is laid out on the table here in front of us. And it is a enamel-based paint, similar to stain or nail polish even. As you can see, they're in nail polish bottles. It's just a very easy way to store them. And you can use them to paint metal, to paint glass, to paint all different types of glass. And I'm going to be going over the way that I use them, which is to make painted fused plates. So here is a clear, empty one. This is what I'm going to paint today with you.
Now, how did you create this one, this panel?
Okay, so this blank plate was created by laying a piece of clear glass over a texturized slump plate, which we have in the store called the Tree of Life. I forgot to bring it back to put on the table, but I will make sure to grab one and share it with you before the end of the show so that you can find it on our website if you'd like to make these for yourself. So you take a piece of clear glass, you lay it over this ceramic embossed plate, a slumping mold in your kiln, and over time the molten glass takes on the impression of the tree in reverse. Now it's really pretty on its own. You can use with any different kind of colored glass. You can put powdered frit over the indents and it will melt and mold if you use the right kind of glass. So if you're using frit, you always match the coefficient of expansion or melting point with the glass that you're going to stick it to. If two glasses that don't have the same melt rate, they will pull apart, sometimes violently. And nobody likes shattered projects.
Nope, I don't.
So this is a standard, regular, just window glass or Wismont clear, non-fusible glass. It's cheap, it's fun to paint on, fun to practice with, but you could not fuse anything to it. You could use bullseye clear or spectrum clear if you wanted to take some frit instead of paint and to colorize the lines in this mold. I've been having a lot of fun with different texture molds and painting though. And I'm going to go over how I do that, as well as not just the basics, the different types of paint, different tools you can use to paint with, ways to blend and use the colors. And over here to the left, we have a complete one that I prepared at home. So this is what it looks like when you have pretty much every color I have here on the table, as well as different leaves where I blended two colors together. And I'm going to show you how I did that. So I paint on the inside, which is where the indents are. It helps keep the paint contained, makes it easier if you're not an expert level painter to keep your lines smooth. Because this is very thin, very runny paint since it's a very thin enamel. And so it likes to spread. So if you're doing it on the indents inside this plate, it's going to stay within the channels for the most part. So it's easier for you, like you're painting into a stencil pretty much, to keep it contained and make it look nicer. I'm hoping as I keep painting for fun that my skills are going to increase, of course, but it really is not my #1 talent. I'm just having a lot of fun with it. So, first thing to know is these enamel-based paints, they cure within a day. They are really, really difficult to scratch or remove. You can scrape through them, as you can see some dots on this purple, but it's very difficult. So it cures really hard. It dissolves, even if it's cured, it dissolves pretty easily in acetone, which you can use nail polish remover-based acetone, paint acetone, or Color Magic sells what they call a thinner. But it's really a little nail ball of acetone. So if you do not have the thinner on you, any acetone will work.
Great.
So as well, the thinner is what you use if you are needing to erase a mistake or the color spread too far. You can apply that with cotton balls or Q-tips. You just soak these in the acetone and scrub away to remove the color you didn't want. I do make use of that now and then, although, like I said, if you stay within your stencil, it's not too hard to maintain.
Okay.
So you have two kinds. You have opaque colors, which are basically a colorant stain mixed with a white pigment base, which makes it more opaque. And those need to be shaken quite vigorously. These have been shaken quite a bit by me. I wish I had left one unshaken so you could see what it looks like and know that that's not ready to use. But generally you'll see the color will be much dimmer and there will be a bunch of white near the bottom. On the underside, you can still see tiny remnants of white that no matter how I've been shaking for 10 minutes, I can't dislodge. But the color's pretty vibrant and I'd say it's ready to use. So in opaques we have, this is pretty much all the colors there are. Just a reminder, we have poppy red, we have pink, we have autumn orange, we have sunflower yellow, we have Kelly green, turquoise, lapis blue, violet, grape, which is a much darker royal purple. We have a flesh tone, should you ever want to do people. When it's in a thinner layer on the glass, it does look much more peachy. It looks much more dense while it's in the vial. We have a medium gray. It's a nice stone gray. We have black, which can be used for outlines or adding detail on any project, not just painting in fully like this. We probably go through more black than any other color. We have snow white. And this is called iridescent frost. I don't know if you can see the shimmer through the video, but this is a nice, excellent little tool that it just lends a layer of iridescence to the glass. And you can put that down below the color, you know, put this down first and then the color, and you'll have an iridescent sheen to whatever you've painted.
Oh, great.
It's a really nice little additive, and we have our thinner.
Okay.
Over here on the other side, we have all these colors in transparent. Now I've made little notes on the transparent colors may not look exactly the way they are described. Because they're transparent and we're painting on glass, they're gonna vary with what color you paint on. I mostly use clear or white so the colors stay true. So this is raspberry. Despite it being a translucent, it does need to get shaken up a little bit. It is a super vivid bright pink. I actually have a sample swatch here. That's the raspberry when it dries. So if you ever need to make a super vivid pink and you don't have or can't afford any of the really expensive pink glasses, you can paint a white with that color and it will come out very, very bright. We have ruby red. I'm going to demonstrate all these colors on the tree here so you'll get to see what they look like as they dry. This stuff dries in just a couple of minutes to its true color. Sunset orange, which in a thin layer is actually more of an orangey gold. Topaz brown, which I actually crossed out and labeled orange because it's actually closer to orange. We have an apricot, which becomes more of a golden amber. We have lemon yellow, which is violently, vibrantly yellow, as described. We have spring green, which is a sort of bright clovery emerald green. We have leaf green, which I know you can't see in the bottle, but it's actually like an olive or mossy green. We have teal blue, which is pretty much what it says on the tin. That's the teal blue right there. We have royal blue, which is your true sapphire, and a vivid purple. And we also have a color they call black onyx, but since Color Magic does not make, for some reason, an opaque brown. This is what I use for brown and what you saw on the finished product for the tree trunk. It dries and looks more of a translucent brown color rather than black, because there's not really a way to have a translucent black. It becomes gray.
Yeah.
And if you mix this with a little bit of white, you'll get an actual looking brown color.
And how much do these cost generally, Jesse?
Each of these costs $6.49. One jar of it goes quite an awfully long way. I think the only jar that I've run out with and had to replace was black, and that's because I used it for a great number of projects at a great number of times. Dotting in eyes on painted faces, adding an outline to something, painting in little whiskers, little details on other stained glass projects. The other color ones I have less occasion to use as an additive on a project. I tend to use them when I'm doing painting like this, and this is a relatively new thing to me, so most of these bottles are still really full.
Okay.
There are a couple specialty bottles and additives. They work differently, and I will warn you about what you need to worry about when using them. So these are non-enamel based. They are actually, they're in the enamel set, but they are essentially a glue or a goo, and they have pearlescent particles floating through them like superfine glitter. So this one's marked as bright gold, and when it dries, it actually looks like a shimmery but really dark gold color. Since these are suspended particles in a sort of glue or resin base, they don't truly cure to the surface. They, unfortunately, on a non-porous surface like glass, stay there a little bit, kind of like glue on your skin, and they can actually peel or be scraped away.
Okay.
They're not as hardy.
Yep.
They do add an effect, but they are easy to remove. This is the silver version, extremely shiny.
Yep.
And this is the white version, which is called White Pearl.
Beautiful.
This last one, I've only used a couple times. It's a UV sealant. So once your paint is all dry at the end, you paint this on over, and it will help keep colors from fading that were painted onto the glass. It's just a UV blocker. It is a little bit gooey, so it takes a little bit of practice to get it on evenly, and it will, I would always put it on the back. So that's why I paint on the back, and I can put this over it. It'll be less obvious that you now have this gel layer over the color.
Yep.
I've only used it a couple times because if your pieces are being displayed inside, you really don't need it. If you're going to display it or hang it up outside, it's probably a good idea to add a layer afterward when your project is all done.
Okay.
All right.
Can I ask for questions before we get started? Does
yes.
anybody have any questions that I can relay to Jesse? Or it looks like everybody wants to get to the painting.
Get to the painting. Okay. So each of these bottles, I'm going to demonstrate, each of these bottles has within it a sort of nail polish applicator. So when you're opening these bottles, this is an enamel, and if you've ever polished your nails or used any other kind of resins, it can form a seal, so the lid may stick. So push down and twist. Otherwise, your paintbrush may stay stuck in the lid. So it's like a nail brush applicator, and it works pretty well for most things, but if you're doing little fine details, it tends to put too much out. Remember, this is super, super thin and runny, almost like water, and so it will cover everything really quickly. So what I do is...
And so I do have one question. Yes. How are these different from fingernail polish?
The exact chemical composition, I don't know. I tried to look up on the manufacturer's website and look around, but I guess it's kind of proprietary. They are set to cure even faster than nail polish. They are thin, and there are translucent versions, which generally you never see in nail polish. Nobody wants a see-through red so you could see your nail bed underneath it.
Yep. Makes sense.
There are other enamel paints that are like this, but they are made to be cured, like to be put in the kiln or otherwise dried. Vitreous enamel, for example, is a powder or a gel. These are somewhere in between nail polish and that, in that they have the long-wearing properties of enamel, so it's hardier than nail polish, but it is quick to cure and to dry all on its own in the air, similar to polish.
Okay.
So it's a nice balance.
They do come, we have a set, don't we, called CM set, if they want to get like one of each?
Yes, we do have a set called CM set. It covers the majority of these. I believe there's one or two that are left out because they've come out with more colors since that set. However, it will cover most of the basics for you. We just got in all these colors for me to play with and for you to play with by extension. So you should be able to find them all on our website.
Very good.
Under Color Magic.
Do we know what the shelf life is?
The shelf life on these, I did look that up with the manufacturer, is similar to polish, is indefinite, as long as they are properly sealed fully and, you know, kept somewhere without extreme temperature variations.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, so if I need to draw tiny details, because in this mold I have lots of little stems and little roots that I want to fill in, that nail polish brush is just bigger than them. I am going to use just some general, like, cheap, I don't know if they're Walmart or dollar store or where, just generic paintbrushes with the little fine tips that are even smaller.
Okay.
So in between and when I'm switching paints, I'm going to dip or paint the tip in some thinner so I can erase it. Ooh, yeah, that acetone smell. That's right there. So I'm gonna go ahead and you can pretty much dip these. I like these have a very narrow tip. The handle may be broad, but the tip is narrow.
Hold it still for just a second so they can see how... Yep, I'm having a hard time focusing on it, but go ahead.
So I'm just gonna dip it in here just far enough so that I know I can get the tip there. There we go. You can see the tip is now black.
Yep.
And I'm gonna rub a little bit of it off because this stuff is so thin that the bristles can hold quite a lot of paint and you don't want to flood your piece. So I am looking for, it may be hard to see on camera, but I'm finding where my little rootlets go out to the edge. I'm just gonna push this down into there and I'm just gonna stroke. Ah, there's a beaut. Okay, so see, it's kind of thin and watery, and that may happen because I don't have enough paint on there. Caution is good because I can always go back and add more. But that's why I use these fine brushes. If I were using the nail polish brush right now, it would hold so much paint that it would just flood down this channel. And I'll show you how that works because I'm gonna do the trunk. And it's gonna fill in the area really quick. There we go, I got more paint on there. So it's for those of you who are painters or have more practice than me, I guarantee you will get even far better results. This is a learning experience for me. I just really wanted to share it with you because I'm really enjoying this. And I'm just stroking within the channel, which was formed when this was fused. And so it helps somebody like me who isn't perfect with painting to stay within my lines.
Okay, so while you're painting, we have some questions.
Absolutely.
Does this have to be fused or baked once dried? Is it complete?
Once dried, this is cured. It takes, it's dry to the touch within a few minutes. It is permanently cured overnight. You absolutely should not put it in a kiln as it will burn away and leave some nasty residue on your glass.
Okay. For those of you who are having sound problems, there are 3 places to check to increase your sound. You can check your external speakers on your computer. You can check the computer itself and turn up, and I don't know if Facebook has a volume or not, but there may be a volume on the Facebook page itself. Because we are right up to the camera is less than a foot away from us, so it's...
And I know that with sound from previous sessions and even this session, that people's results may vary. So if half or more of our audience is getting sound just fine, it means that there's some settings we need to share with how to help for all of you.
It's a directional microphone.
Okay, I'm gonna...
might get Jesse's voice more clearly and yours not so much. Here, I'm gonna take this part of it off.
We're gonna try a microphone here, so hold on for just a second. Thank you. It's a different connection.
Yeah, it's the lightning connector.
I'm gonna juggle my phone for a second, so hold on for just a second while I take my case off. This is a new phone. It might have a different connection.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Nope, there we go. So Jesse, and make
Hello,
it
everybody.
and make it smart.
Make it smart. Wow, you're setting up for failure right away.
Okay, let me know if the sound is any better on this. So, the guy recording may have his hands over the mic. Yes, that's true. So, camera guy
Is anything
voice.
better? Can anybody hear me better? Just like that commercial, can you hear me now?
So, one of the questions was, can we get this this fused piece, this slumped piece, can we buy it direct?
To buy the finished piece?
Yes.
I hadn't, this was an experiment, so I actually hadn't set anything up. Although I'm certainly willing to consider it.
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly slump glass into this mold for people. We haven't thought of that before, but we can certainly consider it and figure out a price for that. So if you are interested in that, seriously, send us an email and we will put that information together for you. So by dipping directly in the bottle, does that contaminate bottle contents?
Only if your brush is not clean. I'm going to clean this brush off thoroughly anytime that I switch paints or anytime that I stop. Right now, I'm only going, the only thing that's on here, as you can see from the patina left over from it, is black. And it's going back into the black bottle, so it's really not adding anything else in here. If I were to switch colors, I would either normally have a little thimble full of acetone in which to, just like with regular painting, you know, cleanse my brush and dry it off before switching paints.
Yep.
Since I don't have that with me right now, I'm actually a little bit leery of dipping it into here, as this is my only bottle of acetone.
Right, yeah.
So I have multiple brushes, so this may become the black brush, and this will be my other color brush. So what I'm going to do is, since this is very see-through, I'll show how it's gone so far. See, I've been filling in the channels, and what I generally do is I go back quite a few times because there's spots where it's blotchy, there's spots where I didn't add enough paint. It's a little bit difficult sometimes to see where all the channels are.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a very relaxing Zen process for me, just going back, because you can always add to it. Being enamel, dropping one color on another will dissolve it and blend very easily, especially if you add to it before it gets too dry.
Okay.
So what I'm going to do, just to add some depth to this, is I'm going to take my medium gray, I'm going to shake it a little bit. There is a, what do you call this, little ball bearing in there?
Oh, yeah? Yeah.
Yeah, just to help it shake and distribute a little more. And I'm going to add some lines into my tree in gray as sort of an undercoating, and then when the brown, the black brown, whatever we want to call it, goes over, it's going to dissolve it a little bit and blend into it.
Okay. So, where's the question? Hold on.
And while Gary finds the question, I'm just painting a thin line of gray, a couple strokes into this root.
So can you use these paints to paint a face on a piece of glass on a stained glass piece and it stay permanently?
Yes, whatever you paint onto a piece of glass, just some kind of little swatch boards here, is going to be pretty darn permanent. You could sit there and determinedly scrape or brass wool it away, but really the only sure way to remove this is with acetone to dissolve it. It is really hardy stuff. So yes, you absolutely could. The consistency of the stuff is kind of like watercolors. You can paint a face with it, but it would require more artistic skill or more paint practice skill than I personally possess, which is why I like to do pretty floral things like this and to utilize the channels in the glass to keep my colors contained. But it sounds like you may have a lot more practice with that than me, and Gary is actually a great painter. So he's going to have to take up practice with this with me at some point. Because he may be able to fill me in on things that I don't understand.
No, I don't know about that.
So I painted in this gray inside this larger section of a root. So I'm going to use the actual natural applicator brush because I want to get a little more paint in there. So I'm just going to dip it. I'm going to brush off a little bit of it because I certainly don't want to flood. And then I'm just going to press down and apply it into the channel, just like if I was painting my nails. And the brush does conform to the shape as you press down, so don't press too hard or your brush will go out of shape. And the more I practice at this, the better I'm getting at controlling the shape of my brush and having nice even edges. I'm still not great at it, but it's a lot better than my first practice piece, that is for sure. So as I put this in, you'll notice that because this applicator brush is carrying a lot more paint, the color it leaves behind is a lot more dense. So I might actually use it to go back over at least the areas it can fit in and fill in some of my roots a little better. Now the reason I use my smaller brush is that the tiny roots at the edges are really just way too small for this applicator brush. So it would just run all over the edges and not remotely stay where it's supposed to.
Okay, am I in your way?
No, you're fine. So now that, since there's more paint, it's gonna take like a minute or so to dry. I could probably pick it up now if I had to, but I like to give it a little bit of time. But once it's totally dry, it's just imperceptibly, those areas are gonna be a little more dense. You can see darker lines within it. And that's where the gray has blended a little bit with the brown.
Yep. Okay.
So it just adds a little color depth to something that's so translucent.
Cool.
So the original took me well over an hour to paint the whole thing. So I'm just going to show you different techniques on different parts of this painting.
Okay.
And refer by showing you, you know, like a cooking show, the one I prepared at home.
Yep, very good.
So now, for example, if say this tendril at the end, that I painted that and I made a mistake. It wasn't meant to be painted because it might not have been part of the roots. It might have been just an error in the glass. So I'm going to show you how I use thinner to get rid of it.
Okay.
And how well that works. So I've got a Q-tip because I don't really want to flood it. I'm just going to get it in there and soak it in thinner.
Okay.
And then I'm just going to scrub away at it. And you'll see just how well it just erases it. It just obliterates that color. It's now completely clean.
Cool.
So you can play with this. You can have fun playing with the colors and doing new things. And you could just erase, if you had enough acetone, you could erase the whole thing and start on over and just keep practicing painting. So it's a fun little activity. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start showing, because with these leaves and how fun and colorful it is, how to blend the different colors.
Okay.
So what I did at home is that I chose to do as many colors as possible to demonstrate them, going just through the whole spectrum, and every leaf trying to blend two different things together and play with my colors, and it was a lot of fun. So I'm going to show you that same thing live on here with a few of those color combinations. And for this, because we're just filling in an area, and I don't have to be so precise, none of these areas are tiny, like where my little tiny brush went with my rootlets. We're just going to use the applicator brushes that are in the bottles. I'm going to stick the lid back on my thinner, because if I knock that with my hand, the whole table will be covered in acetone.
Oh yes, I taught a class earlier today and I knocked over an entire bottle of flux.
The liquid flux?
Mm-hmm. Yep, it was fun.
Oh dear. Okay, so the natural mold for this is 12 by 12. This piece of clear glass was obviously somewhat smaller because it's cut off some of the leaves and shortened the design. Not that it's unpretty or unappealing, but it means that some of my leaves run off the edge. So if I put this in there, there's a good chance the paint's going to run right onto the paper. So for purposes of demonstration, I'm going to fill in the leaves that are fully on the glass, because I don't think we need to spend twice as much time cleaning up.
So Linda is asking, can you use nail polish remover instead of thinner? And we're thinking it's the same thing. Right?
Absolutely. Acetone, whether it's paint remover acetone or nail polish remover or the stuff in that thinner bottle, is pretty much all the same chemical. So here I'm just gently stroking and filling it in, and you'll notice how thin, like water or watercolors, this stuff is, how quickly it flows.
Yep.
So getting a clean edge is actually the hardest thing and something I'm still working on. But filling it in with the color is really, really easy.
Yep, good. So Lou Han is asking, is there a video where we can watch this again? And Lou, all of our videos that are done on Facebook Live are archived on our Facebook page in the video section. So just go to the video section and we will name this Color Magic. So just search for Color Magic and it'll be here on our Facebook page after we get finished.
So for an example, remember how I said you want to push down hard? This is what happens if you don't push down. The applicator is stuck in the bottle.
Ah, yes.
No real reason to cry. If you screw this back on and tight, push down hard and twist, you'll break the seal and the applicator will be in the lid where it belongs.
Oh, that's a good tip. Thanks.
So first time it happened, I freaked out. I thought I broke the bottle. What did I do? What did I do? And then I just screwed it back in and unscrewed it. I said, oh, okay. So this is the solid opal pink. So you can notice a very distinct difference between opaque and not opaque. And that's because, like I said, the opaques contain a little bit of white sediment or pigment that cause it to be not see-through. And it mutes the colors a little bit, makes them more pastel.
So Margie, hi Margie. She has a question about, in lieu of reverse paint on glass, do the colors blend well as far as soft blending versus defined edges of individual colors? And is there a drying time that should be observed? So how do they blend?
I'm about to show you that with
Okay.
one. That was my next thing, was to pick two colors and blend them together.
Oh, cool.
So
Good timing, Margie.
yes, that was perfect timing. So I'm going to take red poppy
Okay,
and I'll paint it on a thing first so we see what it looks like on its own.
okay.
And I will show you how it blends with raspberry. Actually, the first and easiest thing would be to blend our opaque pink with our raspberry, which are two very different colors. And there's a lot of different ways to play with this. And I'm still experimenting. One thing I tried last night is I took my opaque pink and I picked a leaf and I just put a couple dots in there. See how liquid it is? It is like water.
Yeah.
And before it, if you want it to soft blend, to blend thoroughly and make a new color, before it dries, you want to get in there and add your other color. And I don't know how well that's going to show up on camera, but they are blending together just like colored water. And you can move it around a little bit. You can see where the other color is. If I want to blend it really thoroughly, I'm going to swirl the brush around a little bit and move the color around. And I'll hold it up and show from the other side, we've created a third color and texture here.
Okay.
Now my edges were a little sloppy. To fix that, I can go ahead and do my acetone on a Q-tip trick to wipe out some of the edges. So my tip is a little contaminated, so since I don't have a thing full of thinner, I'm just going to wipe that contamination off onto a cotton ball. Now that in just a few more seconds is going to be dry enough to pick up this panel. It dries that quick. So if you want sharper edges, you don't want your colors to blend as much. One, use less paint, like flick it or brush it against the edge so that you get less stain on the brush. And put your first color down and leave it long enough that it dries. It's more resistant to dissolving and blending if it's more dry. Excuse me. And when it's wet like it was and I got it on there quickly, it blended super thoroughly. So I'm going to hold it up and we see our three different colors. You can see that's totally a third new color there. Call it fuchsia, I guess, or hot pink.
Yep. Nice.
And I am going to go ahead here and I'm going to open up my thinner again because I see where that has an edge that I just don't like. I overdid it, and this is just a good point on how you can get rid of edges. So I've got some thinner in this, and I'm just going to go along the edges. I don't want to get too much of it in the leaf itself because it will act like clear water and dissolve what's already in there. And the thinner is even thinner than the paint. So it would flow into that shape and overwhelm everything.
Oh yeah, that's great.
But it erases like magic with this stuff. It just obliterates it. So cleanup or editing stuff is really simple. Okay.
Very good.
Now my leaf edges are much more defined. Okay, so I'm going to show you a different trick now. And I am going to do it with red. We're going to move to the area that I did in reds earlier. So I've got ruby red here. And I'm going to show you what iridescent frost does, both on its own and when blended with a color.
So some more questions.
Absolutely.
Mary is asking what's he painting on. Mary, he's painting on a piece of glass that has been slumped in the Tree of Life mold, but it can be painted on plain glass, or so that's what he's painting on today. Margaret is asking, when blending, does the first color not contaminate? I ought to put it back in the bottle. Let's see. So when blending, does the first color not contaminate? Does it?
The first color, I don't know if we saw or heard that part of my demonstration when we did the blending. So the first color, I just dabbed in and let it sit there, and I put the original brush back in the bottle. And then the second color I got out and I dripped it and used that brush to blend it. And yes, there were remnants of the new color on the brush. And before putting it back in the bottle, I cleaned it on this cotton ball. Right. The most thorough way would to keep a little thimble or a little cup full of acetone there. So just like when painting with other things, I could have cleaned my brush and then dried it before putting it back in the bottle. It was a little bit of my own oversight that I forgot to bring a jar of acetone today, and we don't have one in the shop. So I'm cleaning it as thoroughly as I can on what I have so that my contamination is minimal. There's enough in there that it's not gonna, that one or two of my oopsies are not going to destroy my color set.
Yep, thank you.
All right, so that's the iridescent frost, and this is the little effect it has on its own. It's a shimmery white. If I were to angle this different ways, I don't know how it'll show up on camera, but it has sort of a white iridescent effect.
We can see it. It's not showing. The iridescence is not really showing on the camera.
All right, cameras have limits.
Yep.
So that's it on its own. Now, iridescent frost is a semi-gel based one because it is holding pearlescent particles. So it is, I'll try to show you the brush and see if you can see, it is more gooey.
Okay.
Closer to actual nail polish. So I'm going to pick another leaf here, and I'm going to show you what it is that I usually use it for. I'll put a thin layer down real quick, and then I will blend. My translucent colors are fun, but they are super translucent. So I've got my ruby red here, and before that iridescent dries fully, I want it to dry a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and apply my red on top of it. And it's going to give me a less see-through and iridescent sheen to my red. And we'll see what that looks like in just a few seconds as it dries.
Cool.
Now, I definitely had a lot of...
So, Mary, no, you do not need to bake this paint onto the glass. It will cure in about 24 hours. That's okay. Okay.
So I used quite a bit of paint there. You saw how quickly it spread and overtook everything. So that's why it's better to have just a little. It filled the shape really nicely. Yep. It doesn't really go outside of it. Now I'm going to lift it up and we're going to see what it looks like from the other side. Can you see a bit of a sheen to it? On my side, it sort of has a ghostly or moonlit sheen to it. That's the iridescent frost and the effect it can have when blended.
Very cool.
So that's the red like that. And for contrast, I'm going to put ruby red down on its own in another section, just so we can see what ruby red looks like without tampering. And my ruby red is very thin and flowing today. So I'm just being careful and dabbing and swooping it in. Now this will be totally translucent and not have any shimmer to it.
Okay. So Maynard is asking, is this good for outdoor applications?
You can use this outdoors. Like I said, it is extremely resistant to weathering, to scratching, to everything else. UV light will fade it outside, which is why if you're going to apply it outside, we do have a UV sealant.
Okay, yep.
And it's a gel-like substance. You're going to have to take a little bit of practice to get it on evenly and coated over a color, but that will block some of the UV light and help it last longer.
Very
but
good.
If you drench, and once this plate is done, if you drenched it in water, even if you cleaned it with a sponge and soap, the color will not come off. Just like any other resin or enamel, the nail thing again, it doesn't come off with water. It has to be dissolved.
And what about cleaning the glass prior to application?
Just like any surface you're about to paint, it's going to look a lot nicer if there's no residue or particles that are sitting on it. If you've got dust or dirt in the room, that's certainly going to contaminate your paint. You don't have to be perfect. Like fingerprints aren't really going to affect the paint. They're going to dissolve. The oils in those will dissolve and disappear into the enamel. But you don't want to have a dirty plate.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
If you have dust and dirt in it, it's going to be visible. Or cat hair, like my cat wanted to contribute last night. So there is the red without the iridescent, and this is the red with the iridescent
Very
coating.
nice.
So, and you've got that. Now I'm going to show you next. Does anyone have a preference, a color they'd like to see?
Anybody want to see a specific color?
I'll just keep wheeling through them otherwise.
So while we're waiting for people to answer that question, once the paint is dry, can you scratch the paint to make a texture like for the trunk?
You could. I did an experiment with that with a koi fish. The scratching is not uniform, so it would take a good bit of practice. It's scratch resistant, so you have to
Work at it
just a little bit. And it leaves not a gentle gouge, a very defined gouge.
Got it. Susan and Lucille both agree they want to see green.
Greens, okay. We have lots of greens. On the opaque side, we have just one, Kelly green, but we can get other greens by blending it with other colors.
Okay.
And then on this side, we have leaf green, spring green, and a teal blue, which I liked either on it. I know it's kind of in between green and blue, but if you add it with a little green, you can get other greens again. So first we'll do the greens unvarnishedly pure, and then we'll do some additives. So this first one is spring green. It's the truest green, like a bright emerald green. So it's appropriate for a tree. Not that I'm trying remotely to do whatever is appropriate, heaven forbid. So that's our green, and we'll see what it looks like in just a minute. So as not to waste time, I'll flip through the next ones. That is our spring green. Here's, the lid did its thing again.
Yeah.
So that's
Push harder, Jesse. Push harder.
Yep, that's just because remnants of that enamel is getting, up around the lid, and so it's sticking. And those applicator brushes are just kind of screwed into the top, just kind of pressured in there. So this is, ironically, leaf green, but it's actually an olive color.
Oh, yeah.
I have a way that I'll show you of making what I consider a true leaf green, but it's not this color. And the last one is the opaque green, the Kelly green, and then I'll show you a couple of ways to blend this. You can blend it with yellows to make it a more mossy or spring green, what I consider an actual spring green. You could blend it with blues to take it more of a teal direction, or a hunter green. So without any extra, this is the opaque Kelly green.
Nice.
Okay, we'll give that just a few seconds, then we can review what those look like from the other side.
Okay. So I did have a couple questions.
Yes. So into the next round.
Contaminant is just that two colors. Okay, somebody was asking questions, and Kathy, I guess, answered for me. So thank you, Kathy. I think that's it.
That was
Does
it?
the glass
Okay.
surface need to be cleaned with alcohol?
This should be dry now, so I'm just going to hold it up. And there you can see the difference in our three greens.
Can you put it against the white background? Move it up a little bit so I can, yeah, there we go. Thank you, Jesse.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
My end goal with continuing to practice this is to gain enough control over the paint and the brushes.
So my question, those were the three transparent.
No, this one right here is actually considered an opaque green.
Okay. Oh, I see. Okay, yeah. So-
It has some white sediment to
Yep,
it.
yep,
If I
yep,
were to
yep.
go back into a heavier layer, it would become more opaque.
Okay, good.
The thing is that this is so runny that the only way to really get it more dense safely is to do multiple layers and go back. And each layer is going to slightly blend into and dissolve the previous layer.
Yeah, okay.
So next thing we can do is if we want a more yellow-green, what we can do here is I can take, this is lemon yellow. We can see just how violently yellow this is. So I'll pop it on its own on a neighboring yellow leaf, and then I'll blend it with something. Got a little bit of a hair that got in that bottle.
Cat hair.
Cat hair. That's the cat's fault. We blame him.
Maynard is asking, is the white opaque enough? Is the white opaque enough to be used as dots on a loon on black glass?
Well, we can certainly check that out.
Okay.
Let me grab the white here in just a second after I put this one
I
away.
think the Snow White is.
Snow White gets pretty opaque. I have not tested it on top of black. So that's a good question. We can probably grab a little bit of broken black in a minute and take a look.
Yep.
Okay, so that's the extreme violent yellow of lemon on its own. It is very, very, very yellow.
Yeah, it's nice.
So if I were to want a more mossy green, I would probably start with the same blending technique I did before, getting just a little bit in the center of a leaf. Oh, heaven forbid, that cat.
Margaret is asking, will this slump plate work on opaque glass?
Yes. However, you will have a hard time seeing the impression from the other side on opaque glass. If you wanted to view this on opaque glass, you would want to do it as it is with the impression side facing you so you could see the detail better.
Right.
On opaque glass from the opposite side, you would just have a very shallow impression and you would see sort of a shadow of the figure.
Right. So Jesse is working on what he considers the back of the panel.
Yes.
If you're working on opaque glass, you would want to work on the front of the panel.
So I'm just getting a little bit of the green in here. I
Oh,
think
yeah, look
that
at
I have
that.
too much green, so I
Yeah,
think
a
it's
little
going to overwhelm my yellow.
Yep.
This is still all a very experimental process for me. So
very
that definitely
cool, though.
looks more yellow than the other one. It's definitely a different shade, but only by a little.
Yep.
So let me switch to the white, and we'll take a leaf to put some white on. The white, ironically, even though it may not look it, also is pretty much purely made of sediment particles. So it takes a good bit of shaking for it to be as dense as possible.
Can you hold the camera for a second while I go see if I can find some black glass?
Sure.
Your hand is over the...
My hand is over the camera.
That's okay. I'm just finding some... this is just going to be dark glass. How's that?
Dark is a step, yeah. This is a super dark purple. So I'm going to pick a spot near the corner and put some white on it. We're going to see how nicely it shows up. White shows up pretty well.
Oh, yeah.
So that is a pretty heavy dot. Like I got quite a bit of paint on the brush and then just dipped it. If I were to try to paint it more thinly, I'll do a brush stroke. It is a little more ghostly.
Yep.
If I want it to fill in, you can see towards the top is where the paint puddled a little bit and it was much more dense. So if you
Very
need
good.
dots on a loon or any other figure, a little dab or a dot will come across pretty darn opaque.
Good.
And the black is even more opaque than that. I can show it on something if we want. There's a little hollow in the center of my tree figure, so I can put some black on there. And Gary found me a light peach colored glass, so we'll do a little dab in there. I'll put some on my clear one too though, just so you can see how much it blocks out light. So dab and brush. Black, as you can see, is even more opaque by far.
Nice.
So I've got on this figure, I've got in the middle of this tree, there's a little like, I don't know, owl hole.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm gonna paint that black. You gotta be careful because this stuff is still really thin. Oh, there it went. I'll probably have to clean that up with my thinner and my acetone. So I'm spreading this out thin so we can see when it's spread thin how opaque it stays. Pretty darn opaque. Certainly a little bit less, but still pretty opaque.
Yep, nice.
So I will go back at some point and clean up those edges with my acetone.
Let's see, I missed a couple questions, I think. Some play work on the opaque glass. We talked about that. Margie, isn't it fun to try new things? Yes, we love trying new things.
It is always fun to try new things, and the only way we get better is by starting out bad at something and slowly getting better.
Yeah, exactly.
If I had it here, I'd show you my first painted project, and it was a little deformed.
Nancy says, if you sell the panel without paint on it, I would love to get on the list to buy it. So yeah, Nancy, just email us at info@glasscrafters.com to let us know you're interested, and we will put together what that would take and how much they would be.
All right, so here's our black, and we can see that it's still pretty opaque.
Yeah. Yeah, looks good.
So I'm going to go ahead and I am going to just put a couple more colors down while everyone discusses. I'm going to flip over to the purples because they are some of my favorite things.
Okay. Jesse, while you are pulling up paint, I'm going to show people that we have last. When Jesse and I had a session, about a month ago, we showed we were wire wrapping a little cardinal, and we were using this panel clamp to hold the panel upright. And we have now since made some and are selling them. They are $29.99, and the product code is 3516. So if you are interested in one of the panel clamps, we have them. We have them available now. They work like this.
Do you want to just take the finished thing here?
I'll do it. Yeah.
Here.
So if we set this in here, if you're doing a copper foil piece, just set it in your panel clamp, and then you can bead your edges, or you can do wire wrapping or whatever you want to do. But it's a very handy tool for setting your project upright when you're working on it. So panel clamp 3516 is the product code for $29.99. Thank you very much. Now back to Jesse.
All right, I've applied the violet on one leaf. I'm doing the translucent vivid purple on the side here.
Nice.
So I'll give that a second to dry. One way to give this some depth is as well to use my Snow White, either my iridescent frost or my Snow White.
Yeah.
So there's some techniques you can do with this, which are unfortunately a little difficult to do on things so small as these leaves. I have one more uncontaminated brush. I'm going to use it for my white. And there's a string on it. I again blame the cat. It has to be part of everything. So I'm going to go ahead here. Okay, that was contaminated with something. Oh joy.
Wow.
Okay, I didn't even see that. Okay, so someone did not put my stuff back away cleanly.
Sorry.
It's not. Oh, it's not you. It certainly wasn't you.
So Anna has a question. She says, if you wanted to paint veins on the leaves, would you use that paint first? Would you lay that down first, let it dry, and then paint your green?
If I were to be painting leaves or anything else that's like an undercoat, because since this is the back, anything I want to show up on the outside is going to have to go down first.
Right.
So if I want my veins to show up strongly, yes, I would paint my veins first, let it dry for a while, and come back. And they would be cured enough to resist the next layer dissolving them. So I'm just using, rather than dipping it in my thinner, I'm just using the applicator to get some thinner on there. Now there we go. I have some non-contaminated white on my brush. So It's hard to do on here, but one method you could do is to take just the tiniest amount of white, I'm hoping I have the tiniest amount, and paint along the edge of something. And that would give it a little opacity. And this way, like Margie said, I could blend colors together without fully blending them. So I've got my white and I've put it along the edge here. And it's just kind of ghostly on camera, but it's there. And I'll give it a few seconds so it can dry. And then I'm gonna go back in with my vivid purple, and not as much of it at once. I'm going to paint in the rest, and hopefully my white will stay like a soft highlight on one side of the leaf.
Cool.
Like I said, if anyone has any experience with watercolor, I'm told that this is very much like watercolor, with certainly a few differences, but they flow and interact and can be layered or blended similarly. So I'm gonna hope that that's dried a little bit by now. The longer I wait, the more it'll be dried, but I don't think I can come back in 10 or 15 minutes. So I'm gonna put just the littlest bit on there. I've worked most of the excess purple off my brush, so it's not pooling and running everywhere. And we're gonna flip it over in a second, and hopefully that white has stayed enough to lend a softer edge to my purple where it was. If not, I've learned something, and you've learned something, and I will certainly try again in the future, maybe with more white or giving a little longer.
Have you tried the fine outline pen that comes with this set?
I have not tried the fine line pen that comes with this set.
Okay.
My concern with trying to focus this stuff is it's so thin that even after it comes out of a tip that it's going to spread.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, so yeah, I can notice a difference.
Oh, yeah.
Along this side where the white was, we've got more of a white shadow, and it blends over.
Nice.
And with more practice, I hope to control that a little bit better so it smudges together. So
all right.
if you had the absolute teeny tiniest brush and you had very little on there, you could draw some veins in. I'm just afraid that these brushes are pretty fine, but still not the finest tip. And I'm afraid that they will just spread too much paint everywhere, and you won't have a vein. You'll have just another layer of color.
Yep.
So,
what else you got for us?
that has actually been mostly it.
Okay.
I just wanted to share how much I'm enjoying this color and enjoying this process, and hopefully everyone else may too.
So what questions do we have from our online viewers? Martha says she has a gray opaque glass panel that I need black lettering on the front. Could I use the black opaque for that?
Ooh, absolutely. I didn't come prepared with it, but if you have any lettering stencils, preferably one with a glue backing, or if you can have a Cricut or anything else, you can cut your own using vinyl, and instead of cutting the letter out, cut it and remove the letter so you have a stencil, put it down, and if you were to then take the black and paint it over, let it dry just enough and peel the vinyl away, you'll have a perfectly crisp letter afterward.
Okay, cool.
And that will be hardy and resistant and pretty much not going to be removed from your panel unless you douse it in acetone.
Okay. Alice is saying she doesn't see the set available on our site. Alice, that may be because we're out of one color. If we are out of one color, the set is not available. So you can buy them individually, or you can wait until we do have the set available. If you want, you can email us that you would be interested in the set, and we will open up a sales order for you, which puts in place us making sure that we have everything available, and then we will let you know when it is available.
So we have that one, and then we have the one that I prepared at home. You can tell with the one I had at home that I took a lot of extra time and a lot of leisurely time with the radio on and a glass of wine and worked on this. Cleaned it up a good bit and just had fun with my colors.
Yeah, it looks wonderful, Jesse. Color Magic can also be used with Armor Etch. Armor Etch is a kind of an etching. It's an etching cream that you can, like Jesse was saying, stencil. You can stencil using contact paper or Cricut stencil. Yeah, you can paste it onto the glass, etch, and then the color magic will adhere to it easier than.
If you want to do the absolute most permanent color or stenciling job you can do on a piece of glass, what you'll do first is either have a ready-made stencil or create your own stencil using vinyl or contact paper. Adhere it firmly to the surface. Cover the surface with this etching cream, which basically will eat into the surface of the glass and leave a hair's breadth depth frosted etching shape. If you wash that clean, don't remove the stencil. Wash the etching cream off with hot water in the sink, and then leave the stencil on, let it dry completely, and then go and paint over it. The paint will fill in that ever so shallow etching, and because the surface is rough, it's going to penetrate it even more firmly, and even scratching it will no longer remove it. I've done this for a couple pieces where people wanted a name or a plate or a nameplate or something else etched along the bottom of the piece. And so to make it as permanent as possible in case it was going outside, I etched it first and then used my black paint on my stencil. As far as I know, 3 years later, it's still fun.
Cool. Wonderful. The price of the set, I don't know off the top of my head, Gail, but if you email us, I would be happy to get that information for you. And again, our email is info@glasscrafters.com. Could you demonstrate applying the UV gel?
Sure, I can demonstrate applying the UV gel. Like I said, this is a little more tricky because it is a gel. I don't know if we'll be able to see it, but inside the bottle, see how it moves.
Yep.
A lot more like that. Now coming off on the lid. Oh, that's pungent.
Lovely.
Okay, so it's on there pretty thickly, and I'm just going to go to one of my finished ones, preferably the most dry one, and I'm going to cover it up. It is a gel. It's very clear, so it shouldn't affect your color at all. Very little, if at all. And it is now on there. I don't want to keep going back and forth over it enough, because even though they are different substances and it shouldn't dissolve my color, I don't want to push my luck. Because I think that it lightened the color a little bit just going over that much. Yeah, it did.
Lightened
So
up?
you need a lighter touch than me.
Yeah.
Notice the original was a deeper color. This has gotten lighter.
Yep.
The UV gel blended with it just a little bit and lightened my color. So I'm gonna
So
try
maybe
again.
if you, what would you do would you let it cure first before?
I would let it cure first overnight. We did just do this a few minutes ago. This stuff cures overnight, 24 hours. So I'm going to try a thinner layer of UV glue on my next one, because end of story. If I mess this up, I can erase it by dunking the whole plate in acetone and repainting it. There we go. That didn't dissolve so much. I used a much thinner coat of UV sealant, and it looks like it didn't eat away at my color as much. It definitely still affected it somewhat.
Yep. Okay.
But the
So
point is
I
that-
would wait till the panel is cured before you UV protect it. All right. Wondering about the edges of the paint, like for shading. So Margie is asking. Her question is blending the edges of the paint, like for shading, etc. Is that possible?
It likes to dissolve into itself and make new colors. What I would recommend to try to do that, unfortunately I didn't try that last night, is if I wanted a deeper green for the edges, I would take, I just cleaned this brush so it should be okay. I would take this Kelly green, which is the more opaque green, and I would put it along the underside of a leaf. The problem is if the paint isn't thick, it's actually a very faint color. But I would take that and put it under there. And I would let that dry for as long as I could bear to put up with. Because the longer it dries, the less it's going to dissolve as you put another layer along it. So if I were to let that dry for an hour or more and come back, it's going to be harder and less quick to dissolve. And then I would take my lighter color green and paint along the other section.
Yep.
So that the shade, because it will still blend a little bit, dissolve just the tiniest bit into the other color, but it will stay in its area, stay put much more than if I were to try to apply my other color right now.
Yep. So Margie, it might be worth just picking up 2 or 3 colors and playing with it yourself to see what you can do with it, and to see if the paint can do what it is that you want it to do. Just an idea. Anything else? Just say.
This is the last of the tricks I have for you for today. I'm going to look forward to bringing you some new ideas with some new project I have in the future. But this has been my little relaxing pastime for now.
Wonderful.
And I hope you found this entertaining. If anyone has any last minute questions, now is the time.
Yeah. And we will review the comments on the video and make sure that we answer any unanswered questions. So if you do have any additional questions, just note it and we will answer you and let you know. Okay? Thank you very much. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time. Finito.